Here's what we're going to do with your parent, with your teacher, with a principal to be successful. So that when we test a child at the end of the year, that one test, it shouldn't really come as a surprise. We should have a whole series of assessments, a whole series of evaluations, so that children and families know exactly what strengths and weaknesses are and have a chance to be very, very successful. Third, we need comprehensive data systems. And I think it's so important that we know the facts. And data doesn't tell you everything by any stretch, but it sure tells you a lot. And we have to be able to track student progress from 3 years old to 23 years old and everywhere along that trajectory. We have to be able to track students back to teachers. I know this is controversial. We want to know which teachers are really adding value, where are we seeing great growth. I'm much more interested in growth and gains. So we want to be able to track every child throughout their career and back to their teachers along every step of that career. And then we need to be able to track teachers back to their schools of education. Some schools of education schools of education are doing a great job of helping teachers come to the profession ready to learn and ready to drive student achievement, and others aren't. And we need to be very, very clear about that. Third, I want to really think about how we reward talent. In our business, talent matters tremendously. You guys know that. 3 great teachers in a row, the average child can go on to do extraordinary things. 3 bad teachers in a row, that average child is going to be so far behind, it's going to be very, very hard to catch up. So how do we think differently about that? I think, again, all these ideas are a little controversial, a little edgy sometimes. I think we have to think about how we reward excellence. How do we identify the best and brightest and reward that? And I don't think we can do enough to spotlight the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of teachers around the country who are doing a phenomenal job every single day and going well beyond the call of duty. We also need to identify those teachers where it's not working. And after significant support and trying to help them develop, maybe they need to find another profession. Be clear about that. And keeping people in the system 25, 30 years who don't have a heart for children and aren't doing the right thing, again, we become part of the problem. So really thinking about rewarding, incenting, recognize, shining a spotlight on excellence, and then we have to make some tough decisions doing that as well. Secondly, we have to really think about how we get the best and brightest to take on the toughest of assignments. And this is one I worry about a lot, whether it's inner city urban, which is where so many of us are focused, or whether it's rural. There have been tremendous disincentives for the best and brightest to take on tough assignments and very few incentives. We have to fundamentally reverse that and get the best talent where we need it most. And all of you know, when we have best talent in our toughest of communities, miracles happen. And when it doesn't happen, again, I really believe we are part of the problem. So thinking about talent in very, very different ways. Rewarding it, placing that talent where we need it. And then we need to think about hard-to-staff areas, math and science, foreign language. We should probably pay math and science teachers more. We need more of them. In Chicago, we brought probably 50 resumes for every English position. We had math and science shortage. It didn't make sense. So we need to sort of think about how you do that differently. And then finally, I want to sort of push all of us to think about how we turn around our lowest performing schools. And all of us have phenomenal schools. They're doing a great job. I think we need to think more creatively about replicating those schools and doing more of them. And when we have long waiting lists, there's a demand there. We need to increase the supply of those types of schools. There's a whole set of schools in the middle that are improving, and we need to continue to accelerate that improvement and challenge the status quo and help them continue to get better. But where we have a set of schools that are both very low performing and where the growth and the gain gives us no reason to be hopeful, in fact, it makes us more pessimistic, I think we have to really, really challenge ourselves to think about how strong the medicine needs to be. The sort of tinkering around the edges is not going to get you where you need to go. And the President talked about 2,000 high schools basically accounting for over 50% of the dropout rate in the country. Unfortunately, many of those 2,000 high schools are in our school system. We had some of them in Chicago. And how we really think differently with those schools where it's simply not happening, and unfortunately most of them haven't been happening, not just for the last year or two, but as you know, for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And what do we really do to fundamentally challenge that status quo and give those children a dramatically better chance to learn? What I want to challenge you on the stimulus money to think about is there's tremendous need. I know that. And we want to save literally hundreds of thousands of teaching jobs. The last thing we want to do is see class sizes go from 25 to 40 and lay off all of the social workers and librarians and all of that. But I'll be really, really clear. If all we do is use the stimulus money to invest in the status quo, we're not going to get where we need to go. We're not going to get close. And so I want to push you to think not just individually, but collectively, and maybe, Mike, you can think about some structures regionally, whatever it might be, to get folks to think about how do you use these scarce dollars to drive the kind of fundamental and dramatic change that all of our school districts need. There isn't one district here yet is where it needs to be. And one of the best things that Secretary Spellings did for us in Chicago is she put the teacher incentive money, the teacher incentive fund money on the table. And that money changed our behavior in Chicago forever. Without that money, we would have been talking with the union for the next 25, 30 years. We would have gotten nowhere. The fact that there was money on the table forced us to think differently, to behave differently, and to challenge the status quo. So please think about the stimulus money as being a tool to help you get where you and your heart need to go, but for whatever political pressure, whatever issues might have been in there, whatever adult issues stood in your way, use this money to drive the kind of change that you need to see have happen. Beyond the stimulus money, we're going to put unprecedented discretionary money on the table. $4.35 billion for states to think about that suite of reforms we talked about. And we're going to work with a set of states to create what we call a race to the top. I think what we've had in many states is a race to the bottom. We want to reverse that. And we want to work with a small set of states that will really drive reform in all of those areas, not in one or two or three, but in all of them, and have them literally lead the country where we need to go. We're going to put $3 billion out in discretionary money in Title I, School Improvement Fund. Again, that money should come your way. $650 million for districts and nonprofits to think about innovation. We're tripling the teacher incentive fund in the stimulus package. And I'm not supposed to go too far on this as we come back in the FY010 budget. Keep an eye out for that money to continue to grow. But let me be really clear. So it's unprecedented money coming out already. Historic money coming out in discretionary dollars, competitive dollars, dollars that we're going to put on the table through an RFP process. But as we go through those RFPs, we're going to really be looking closely at how you're using the original stimulus money. And if it's just, again, filling gaps, filling holes, not pushing the envelope, that will basically disqualify you for the other money that's going to follow. If you're using this money to make those kinds of tough calls and do the things that need to be done, we want to continue to incent that and reward that and move in the direction where you need to go. I'll close with just a couple things, and none of this is news. You guys are living this every single day. One is, I think, particularly our poor children, they need more time. They need a longer day, they need longer weeks, they need longer years. So how you think about getting our students more time with you, with your teachers, how we start to avoid summer reading loss and do things differently, how we keep our schools open 12, 13 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, 11 months out of the year, being creative. But our children are going to continue to be in a competitive disadvantage against other places around the world who simply invest more time in them. And again, particularly our children that don't have two parents at home, who aren't ready to. How do we think very differently about that? So time is one. The second one is talent. How do we continue to get the best and brightest, recruit them, and think about, for all the difficulties of the economy, Rahm Emanuel has a great line, never waste a good crisis. One of the few benefits of the tough economy is that the teaching profession has never been more desirable. And how we recruit this next generation to go in. There are many districts now who they're not even accepting any more substitute teachers, where people are full up. And so how do we, as we, a baby boomer generation retires, as we have this significant turnover, how we use that challenge to create a great opportunity to get the next generation of great talent to come into public education. And because this baby boomer generation is coming out, I'm convinced our ability to attract great talent into teaching and then keep that great talent, which is much tougher as you know, keep that great talent in teaching. We're going to shape public education over the next 4 or 5 years, for the next 25, 30 years. It is absolutely a generational shift. So thinking about how you get that great talent in, how you get that great talent into the schools that need the most help, how you reward that talent very, very differently and build real career ladders is hugely important. The final one is what do we do differently around struggling schools? I'm going to be really clear. Instead of our schools, money is not the answer. More money, good money after bad is not the answer. So how we think about bringing in whole new teams of adults to work with those children, adults who have the highest of expectations, who really understand what those students can do. And we learned in Chicago that as we turned around schools and moved adults out and brought in different teams, children who had historically dramatically underperformed improved exponentially. We had children whose test scores increased not 2 or 3%, they did 2 or 3 times better. And it speaks to what we all know, both the historical heartbreak of the opportunity that wasn't there before, and how much potential all of our children have. Doesn't matter how poor, doesn't matter how tough the neighborhood, what they can do. When we did these turnaround initiatives, same children, same families, same socioeconomic challenges, same neighborhood, same buildings, we put a little paint on the building, that was it. But the adults had a dramatically different mentality, dramatically different sense of our students' potential. And where we do that, we have a chance to fundamentally change their outcomes. So I thank you for your extraordinary commitment. I thank you for the convinced over the next couple of years, if we work hard enough, if we work smart enough, and if we work together, not in isolation, but if we work together and continue to learn from one another, we have a chance to do something very, very special in the country in the years ahead. Thank you so much, and I'll take any questions you have.